Hello, everyone. Welcome to our latest buddy read chat on Golden Fool, Book 2 in the Tawny Man trilogy by the inimitable Robin Hobb. Hopefully you can see and hear us. I think Derry's already here. Hey, Derry. Good morning. It looks like it's 5 a.m. for you, but better than... Oh, yeah. Better than 2 a.m. I like it.
Yeah, I think she actually sent that last night because I answered her last night.
Oh, okay. We'll
When
see
you
if she's
posted
actually...
it.
We'll see if she's here. Oh, hello, Chadia. Welcome. We're doing this a little bit later in the day than we normally do, so we'll see if get
And a
any
different day.
new folks. Oh yeah, different day, different time. Yeah. So thanks for joining us here on the Saturday afternoon. Beautiful day
I was
today here
hoping
on the East
Chaudia
Coast.
would be here.
Nice. Okay, well, we should start with some non-spoiler thoughts, I think, about Golden Fool. And before we get in spoilers, probably just do very quick non-spoiler stuff. Oh, Chatty, it's 7 p.m. Nice. Where are you at, Chatty? I have no clue. Let's see. It's probably in Europe somewhere then. Maybe.
Germany? That's just a guess.
But yeah, how did you feel, Colin? We've stayed away from, I think, chatting a lot on this one. So I think I know overall how you felt, but I don't know a lot of the details of it. So I'm so curious what you make of this one.
So I mean it's impossible like in this bubble that we're in book 2, and I forget, sometimes the way that we talk about books and that's the stuff that we hear like isn't what most people hear about books going into them. But a lot of people had told me that this one was their least favorite of the Tawny Man trilogy because it's a lot of just not much happens. But I think I've discovered, and this is not the case for every author, but I think I said to you or somebody in like one of the discords, like, if this what happened in this book, I could have literally read another 250 pages of it and been totally okay with it. I loved this book so much. So much happened, but so much didn't happen at the same time. Like, I don't really know exactly how to put it.
That might be putting it perfectly. No, yeah,
But I loved it.
also,
Like,
yeah.
I mean, I loved it maybe almost just as much as the first book, but except for
Nice,
just
yeah.
some of the stuff that we got in the first book was just so good that I think,
Yeah.
Fool's Errand, I think a little bit more I loved. But I mean, it felt like, I don't know. We'll get into it with spoilers, but overall, I loved it. Like, I really, really enjoyed this book.
Oh, awesome. Man, so far we have been 5 for 5 for both of us because I also had a great time with it. Yeah, I don't know how necessary it is to compare books within a trilogy, although we all do it, and I always love ranking books. So yeah, I might have maybe just been a little bit more enthralled with Fool's Errand, but like different books in different parts of a series and parts of a trilogy, they're supposed to feel different. They're supposed to do different things. And the way that like we came back to Fitz after 15 years or whatever in Fool's Errand, like that made that whole catching up period kind of feel really special. And then we go on a quest and there's lots of intensity around that and lots of suspense. And then this book just is this middle book that's doing something so different, but it feels so essential to the whole series and the trilogy that especially after the tense quest of book 1, I was ready for more of the like just relax into the slice of life stuff from the beginning of Fool's Errand. So I ended up being so happy with this whole book. Yeah, I had no expectations for it at all. I had no clue what was going to happen because I know that it's lots of different reactions to it, and I just had no clue. Like after book 1, like I felt like anything could happen. Like I felt like we could go on more quests almost immediately. I felt like we could stick around where we were. But in the interest of not wanting to spoil anyone who might have just stumbled across this. I'm almost catching myself now before we get into spoilers. So I feel like we should just jump in spoilers so we don't have to watch what we say anymore. Does that sound
Yeah,
good?
I mean, this is I'm okay with it. It's the second book in a
Yeah.
trilogy. That's the third trilogy in a 16-book series. So I don't know how many people are going to be hanging out that haven't read it yet, but yeah, I think, it's kind of hard to talk about anything in this without at least spoiling stuff in Fool's Errand, you know.
Yeah. Okay,
Um
I'll put that on the banner at the bottom. So spoilers up through Golden Fool. So everything, including Golden Fool and Fool's Errand and Live Ship and Farseer trilogy. But yeah,
yes.
I was kind of hoping that we would just be able to stick around Buckkeep without any crazy, dramatic, random stuff popping up that we then have to go on a new quest for. And
I yeah.
oh, Derry's here.
Very.
Hello, Derry. Chatty, I saw you said I was more in Ben's camp this time. I is that I wasn't sure what camp that was. I I pretty much love this, so I'm in the loving Golden Fool camp and the trilogy so far. Um, but if you can elaborate where you were, Chadia, that would be interesting to know. But yeah, I had no clue what was going to happen, and the fact that we ended up just getting the whole book where we are with Fitz in Buckkeep, I felt like was exactly the slowing down the whole series needed for Fitz to just like figure out where he's at in his life and figure out all the different relationships going on. And so yeah, I think it was perfect. I didn't need anything else to happen. And while major, huge, dramatic world plot events aren't happening in this book, I don't feel like it was particularly slowly paced in terms of like we're continually getting new dramatic things happening for Fitz and around the keep and the town, and there's suspense around what's happening with the piebalds and the threats to Fitz's life. Like there's continual suspense and tension. There's always something new happening with people in his life, whether it's figuring out his relationship stuff with Jenna, getting into that relationship, and then getting in trouble with it, and then in and out of trouble with the Fool and with Dutiful and Jade. Like all of these relationships, Thick, uh, Ketrican, Starling, like there's so many that he goes through like phases with. Like it feels so true to life where there's misunderstandings and new understandings and hiding things and just all the tension of different types of relationships you might have, whether romantic or mentor or friend. Just every type I think Fitz goes through the ringer here, and it's just I thought it was very compelling for all that, and that it wasn't particularly so paced. Although I will say the chapters felt a bit longer than normal for this series, and certainly no like earth shattering like major plot events are happening like we usually got in every live ship book or every Farseer book. Even like it feels like this is really a pausing in the major events. But so in that sense, I can understand people feeling like not much happens. But on the small scale, it's like a ton of things are continually happening.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I think, you know, this book, this series, excuse me, the Tawny Man. So with Farseer, the last time we were hanging out with Fitz, not including Fool's Errand, I just think that this series it's so true to life in the sense that we are so caught up in Fitz as a character in Farseer, and he's so young, and he thinks he knows so much about what's going on. And so I, as the reader, thought that I knew so much about what was going on, but in reality, I had no idea how so many of the exterior plot events that weren't directly affecting Fitz but were affecting Hobb's world were actually going down. Now, when we get to Tawny Man, and this is what I mean when it's so realistic to how real life is, where Fitz is an adult now, and he is once he's dragged away from living like a hermit and joins society again, it's almost like just because by the nature of him being older and being an adult, he is entrusted with and understands way more about the political goings on in the world and the political goings on just within the court, like the royal court of Buck. And he just kind of gets thrusted back into it in a way that he was totally not anticipating. And it just felt like again, like so many other parties knew that this is how Fitz's life was going to end up turning out, except for Fitz. And then, like, I just realized, like, halfway through Golden Fool, like, he's literally in the middle of everything and almost like the centerpiece of everything that's happening. And this was like the exact opposite of what he had intended to be somehow. Like,
Yes.
and there's so many like ironic things that just have happened throughout this book that, I mean, like, he's the skill master, like Fitz, who like has never had confidence in himself in exercising the skill, ends up being the skill master. And there's so many things that we get from Fitz's perspective where he's like, I don't feel suitable to do this. Like, I don't feel like I have the capability to do this, the talent, the wherewithal to do this, but I got to do it because no one else can do it. And that's like, it just feels like that's like life sometimes as an adult. Like, I don't really know what I'm doing, but like, I think I know what I'm doing, and there's no other option. So I guess I'm going to do it. Like, I felt so many moments of that throughout this series. And I was like, I don't know how Hobb does this. Is able to capture the essence of humanity like so well.
Yeah, and the density of humanity too. Like, a lot of people are maybe intelligent with some things or very skillful in some areas, but then have major kind of blind spots. And I think Fitz, more so than in any of the other books, where I was just feeling like, oh, Fitz maybe is a bit dense with other people, but it's like normal, like par for the course kind of things. But I think because this book focused so heavily on his relationships and interpersonal interactions and conversations and misunderstandings, I think it became really clear that Fitz is, I think, almost like to an abnormal extent, kind of dense around with other people, and it makes sense with how he grew up. And he basically didn't grow up socially in a like normal kind of environment. He grew up very isolated from other people his age, with growing up with these adult mentors who were also kind of loner types like Burrich and Shade, uh, and growing up, spending so many years so connected with Night Eyes, I feel like Fitz really only understood Night Eyes and like could fully understand Night Eyes, and they fully understood each other. And I don't think he ever learned how to really understand other people, other humans, and understand his own effect on them and what's really going on behind their facades and what they're not saying, or the subtext in what they say. Like, I think Fitz is continually not understanding the people around him, like Jinnah and Dutiful, Burrich, uh, Nettle, Shade, like Ketrikin, basically everyone. I feel like Fitz is not understanding basically like what their perspectives are, what their emotional kind of realities are. He's always guessing, and he seems to be guessing wrong. Like, he thought it'd be good for like Lady Patience to not know that he was, still alive, and good that for Burrich to think that he was dead. And then he realized, like, oh, they've been feeling horribly guilty about Fitz, and maybe just keeping that secret wasn't the right thing for them. And just I don't know, I was just getting the feeling, especially maybe his relationship with Jenna started to illustrate that for me, or where like she has continual advice around like what he needs to do with Hap, and like Fitz is just clueless with the situation Hap's going through with Sanja. No, what's her name?
Svanja or something.
Spanja. Yeah.
Svanya. Yeah, I don't know.
Like Fitz is just thinks, oh, this is not going to be a problem. Hap can handle it. Like Jenna like knows that he has to take a firmer hand because she's much more socially adept and understanding of these types of things. And Fitz is just like completely lost to the point where I started to think he might have been being written almost like he's on the autistic spectrum, like ASD, like Asperger's a little bit, like just because he doesn't seem to have almost any ability to be socially aware and do perspective taking of other people. But even if it's not that particular kind of neurodivergence, I feel like it might just be a result of his upbringing and of being so closely connected with Night Eyes, where he related just so deeply to Night Eyes, and he learned himself to just be more like a wolf, lone wolf with, or paired with Night Eyes, that he just does not understand other people. And I feel like that's a major theme of this whole book, and is maybe why people get so frustrated with Fitz or call him dumb or dense, because I don't think he's dumb. He's extremely intelligent, but definitely with understanding other people's motivations and emotional lives, I think he is just completely unaware of a lot of that, what's going on with others.
Yeah, he's always seemed oblivious to things that are obvious to other people. And the way that Hobb writes Fitz and Farseer and in Tawny Man so far is we are so, as the reader, I, at least, I'll speak for myself, am so, sorry, invested into Fitz's narrative in his head. And then when big reveals happen, where other people saw things that were so obvious that Fitz doesn't understand until something happens that people were trying to prevent, or it seems obvious to me in retrospect. Like, how did Fitz not see that this was how this was going to play out? But I was so just caught up in his mindset that I also was like oblivious to the obviousness of certain situations that were happening. So I don't know how Hobb does it. And the other thing that I was not worried about, really going into this, I wanted to see how I was going to feel about. We've spent a lot of time with Fitz and Night Eyes.
Mm-hmm.
They were a character to me for so long. Like, there was no Night Eyes without Fitz. There was no Fitz without Night Eyes. Somehow, and I obviously missed Night Eyes, like just the interactions that they had.
Yeah, totally.
But I didn't really think about it in this book.
Yeah.
Except for the moments where like Night Eyes spoke to Fitz, or
oh my god, those were so touching. Yeah.
Patrick and reaching out to him, like Derry was mentioning. Like, I somehow didn't. It was fine. Like, I was still as invested.
I mean,
in Fitz as a character.
He had so much to worry about, because he's continually needing to like think about Hap, as Hap's life is basically like falling apart, and so he's like has that he has to continue to deal with throughout the whole book. And I loved how, even though it was a bit of a struggle to get there, that eventually Hap is now living at the master carpenter's place and doing well with the apprenticeship, and maybe sees that Svanja wasn't the great love of his life. Like, so I like where that ended up, but like just he has that to deal with on top of all of the Buckkeep political intrigue, where there's dealing with the piebalds, and that's this whole major important plot where his life is threatened, and he wants the witted also, who are not piebalds, to be able to open this dialogue with Kettrikin and take a more open place in society. And then there's everything with the the Out Islanders delegation and dealing with all the intrigue of being a lead spot, one of the lead spies, and needing to keep tabs on all of that. And then the Bingtowners, when they come, and he's
Oh
needing
man.
to be a main like spy and information gatherer with that, and then training Dutiful in the skill and dealing with like Nettle, who's continually like skilling with him, and then Birch's son coming by, and Thick and Shade becoming skill users, and part of like there's a million things that he has to deal with here, and his relationship with the Fool also takes a tumble, and so like there's so much human stuff that gets dealt with here, and his own romantic life with Jenna as well. Like there's a million and one things that Fitz has to deal with other people. So I think that I also didn't really feel the absence of Night Eyes too much, just because there wouldn't have been that much space for Night Eyes in this particular book anyway. I think, and the few bits of voice from Night Eyes of words of wisdom, I think were really touching and poignant, and I'll be very happy if we continue to get those. And I love that that does seem like something kind of supernatural, spiritual going on, where because of their connection, it's not like actual Night Eyes, but it's kind of his voice and being that's still with Fitz. So I don't know, that was great. I love that. But yeah, I'm with you. I wasn't missing Night Eyes overly much from this narrative, just because there's so many other just crazily important personal and political concerns that Fitz has to deal with here. I mean, I just tried to name all of them. There's probably some that I missed, but like, my goodness, there's so much that Fitz has to deal with, and they're all complex, either personal relationship things or complex political things where there's lots of like information that he doesn't know. Like all that we know about the Bingtown stuff and the Rainwilds, like they know nothing of that. And I just want them to be like, embrace them, make an alliance. Like, yes, make an alliance with Tintaglia and Selden, and don't be suspicious of them. Like, but they don't know any of that, and they're dealing with that on top of the Out Islanders, who are very suspicious. And man, like there's so much intrigue here, and that we only get it from Fitz's perspective. Really, I think Hobb is masterful in that first person limited perspective writing, because it's truly not omniscient. Like we only know what Fitz knows and what he thinks about things. And so when we realize that like, oh, he probably should have been thinking a lot more about civil, like he thought a little bit, but he should have been more on top of that, or more on top of like what was going on with Thick in the beginning. And like, yeah, but he's dealing with so much that he can only think about so many things. And so like, I think like Fitz, we're just constantly diverted, and we miss some important things that we should have caught, or that Fitz should have helped Shade to catch and realize. But good thing it all worked out in the end, because
in some way
they foiled the plot of the piebalds. And oh my god, that was so tense. I was so happy when the horse guy with one arm, what was his name? Loudwine. When Loudwine finally, like, he killed Loudwine and killed the horse, I'm like, oh my god, but Loudwine's gonna go into the horse now. And I thought, okay. And when he killed the horse, I'm like, oh my god, this murderous, revenge filled bastard is gone. Like, oh, thank goodness, at least one major threat from Fitz is done. And then of course, though, we couldn't just have like this relief of this removal of a threat. It's like now Fitz is on death's door, and
literally,
and he's rotting in prison, and he feels awful about that. But like, Fitz is not a character that I could that I always love. Like in that moment when he's rotting in prison, and like he's like, okay, I understand intellectually why I'm here, but I'm still mad at Shade for like letting me out here. Like he has all these really personal frustrations and anger with other people that's often not really justified, and he even knows it, but he still, lets his kind of selfish anger sometimes out. And it's so realistic. It's so natural people to have those thoughts. when, in their own internal monologues, and then to over time realize like, okay, I didn't need to be as angry there, or that was unjustified. Like Fitz is so relatable, and it's not as just like heroic and escapist of a character as often we get in epic fantasy. uh it's really so realistic though, and frustrating for all the reasons that real people can be, or real life is for us.
Yeah. I mean, so I think, there was a point where I was a little bit ahead of you, and then you ended up beating me to the finish line. Um, but I don't know if you recall, in one of the few side conversations we had in Discord, where I told you how like chapters like 11, 12, 13 like might be some of my favorite chapters in the
Ooh.
entire series, because I feel like the relationship between Fitz and the Fool, which is a whole thing that I'm sure we'll get into in this, kind of takes on a completely new meaning, because Fitz, I'll put it this way. I have never doubted the identity of the Fool as much as I currently do. Like, I am now wondering, who is this? Like, really? Like, exactly how Fitz is feeling, because the Fool is so adept at putting on the facade that he needs in order to fulfill his means and ends, which the Fool doesn't even know what they are. But he's still so calculated in the way that he
Yeah.
can create an entirely new character that it has literally just exacerbated Fitz's trust issues with the Fool, to the point where he like reaches a breaking point, obviously. But before that ever happens, and we get the Fool recounting what happened in Bingtown, and all of those, like, and then Bingtown coming, and like we get this series overlap, because we had just finished Live Ship, and I think that because we went right from Live Ship into Tawny Man was so quickly, like that hit so hard for me, like seeing these two worlds that we knew kind of converged, but like weren't really converged at the time we were reading Live Ship, but seeing them really come together, and how all of this was going to affect the world at large, um, was so cool. And then there's already been these legends that the minstrels have spun about Tintaglia, and um, then the Fool's like, no, all this stuff is like real. Like, I saw this. I don't know how it's going to play out here, but like I was there for a lot of this, and
Yeah.
there's so much now going on, and I think this is how it was in Forest here, but I can't remember exactly. But it's almost like, I feel like when people say nothing happens in this book, it's because nothing happens to Fitz, because so much happens in this book to actually further the plot around Fitz, if that makes sense. You know what I
Yeah, yeah,
mean?
totally.
And now he's aware of it. Like, and then the whole thing with Chade, like Chade was just, I thought Chaudia mentioned Chade earlier, but um seeing Fitz's viewpoint of Chade change was really devastating in such a realistic way, because I think Fitz didn't even realize how much he took Chade's words as gospel, and that Chade just knew everything, and that Chade had plans for everything, and knew how everything was going to go, and knew everybody, and had spies everywhere. And Fitz coming to realize that Chade is slipping, and maybe
Yeah.
isn't the omniscient, person lurking in the shadows that Fitz had always kind of thought that he was, and them being on like equal ground now, but in kind of like different ways. Like, all of this stuff was so much fun for me to read about. I don't know how you felt about like how we
Oh, it
we
was
start to see these
compelling.
worlds
Yeah.
converging
Yeah.
now.
Well, when the Bingtowners came, I had no clue that was going to happen. Glad I didn't read any, jacket blurbs or back cover blurbs to get spoiled on that, because wow, I was so hungry for information about the live ship characters, and then we learn Althea is pregnant, and Althea and Brescian are
Yes.
hopefully going to have a child, and um, at least a bunch of the dragons have hatched and are being cared for by Tintaglia. Uh, what else did we learn? I don't know. Did we learn anything else about other characters? Maybe. Uh, but even the little we got
Well, little
was.
little Paragon.
Oh yes. Oh
Yeah.
my god. Yes. Yes. What is his
The
name?
wit
Paragon Ludluck.
Paragon something Ludluck. Yeah.
Oh my
So
god.
this all this little stuff that
Yes.
you're talking about, we learned that through Fitz overhearing the conversation with Jack, right?
Yeah, probably. When Jack was talking to the fool.
Because the fool didn't tell Fitz all of this.
Yeah, that was probably
But
overhearing.
that moment when Fitz was, they were kind of quarreling, Fitz and the fool, and he's like very mistrustful of Jack. Fitz is, and he's like he like storms out but doesn't close the door and listens to all that. Like in that moment was really where Fitz's questioning of the fool's identity and my questioning of the fool's identity really began to like. I was like, wow, like I mean, I knew that he put on these different characters, but like he is so real as certain characters to
Yeah.
different groups of people that I
Yeah.
understand Fitz's like identity crisis with the fool. Like he's like, how can this person Amber be so real to Jack, and the fool be so real to me, and Lord Golden be so
Yeah.
real to
Yeah.
everybody
Yeah.
else in court? Like, um,
Yep. Exactly.
it,
Exactly. Yeah. It's
yeah,
the fool is quite still the mystery and enigma, and feels like he's still holding back some information about himself to Fitz for whatever reason. Um, but I don't fully understand the fool's feelings towards Fitz. Like he seems to have all different kinds of love for Fitz, and to be maybe like conflicted or confused about how he feels about Fitz or about what he wants Fitz to know. He seems to want to just protect Fitz and keep him in the dark on a lot of things, or just let Fitz kind of be this unknowing catalyst. Uh, so he feels like he has to hold back because of that, or just I don't know. It is still Fool's definitely still this enigma that I'm hoping we're gonna just get more exploration of. I'm assuming we'll get a lot of that in the next book, even though Fitz and Chade think this is hilarious to me. By the way, they think they're gonna prevent the fool from going on the quest, and they this is like this shows, I think, both Fitz and Chade's one of their blind spots, and it's a common blind spot for lots of people in real life, is that they think they know what's best for other people and make huge important decisions just on their behalf and control them, thinking that they know best or want to protect someone. Um, and like it still frustrates me that Fitz doesn't buy into the larger like prophecies or fate, and that like all these crazy events. Like he thinks like he doesn't really think there's a dragon at the end of this quest, and that the fool's whole changing fate through him is that real. Like he's discounting it by wanting the fool to stay back at Buckkeep. He's basically just saying like, okay, the fool thinks he's gonna die, like I'm protecting him, I don't care about his larger mission and the whole fate thing that he's trying to get the world back on the right track. And like he's very short sighted, and he doesn't give the fool, I think, enough credit in all this. And yeah, that's just one of those thoughts I have. But to go back to Chade, you're right that like his relationship to Chade is so compelling in this book, because he was this mentor figure, this all knowing kind of genius master that was teaching him as the apprentice like for so many years, and to realize like that this person is fallible, like Derry says, that they're slipping now, or that they themselves have blind spots. Like, he's realizing that Chade has resentments from the way he grew up, or that he was restricted in using the skill, and that he has his own ambitions and wants to be like. Fitz doesn't know how to deal with that Chade is like his own actual human person, and not just like the wise old mentor spy master, who's like, like a Gandalf figure. But so I was refreshed by Chade here, because I loved how Chade was so enthusiastic about learning the skill. And it's like, yeah, Fitz is like, trying to block you from using the skill shouldn't stop you from doing it. And if you are starting to slip, like, great, use the skill and healing yourself. Like, it's working out so far, and Chade is kind of renewed, and it will be, I think, a real asset to everyone going forward, now that he's has healed himself a bit and become a little bit more youthful physically and mentally, hopefully, and a part of the coterie. Like, that chapter, where the coterie chapter, was maybe my favorite in the book. And just the way that this like ragtag group came together to save Fitz, and it was just really beautiful, especially how Thick was such an important part of that. And I think Derry, we haven't spoken about Thick yet, but way back, Derry was like, wait, where's that comment? Oh no, I missed it. How much do? Oh, there it is. How much do we love Thick? Oh my god! What? At first, I'm like, oh, this is unpleasant. He's just like recoiling at Fitz and calling him
Dog
names.
stink.
And like he's never met Fitz before, yet he's like really suspicious. And I'm like, okay, this is not good. But oh my god, when Fitz skills into Thick and sees his memories that led up to that moment, it's like, oh my god, you couldn't have felt worse for Thick, who's just like assaulted and abused into like being scared and weary of Fitz, and lied to by those horrible piebalds, and everyone there that captured him. And like, wow, like that puts everything that we saw with Thick in a new light. But the way that Fitz really tries to be understanding and to bring Thick in and make him feel actually like an respected person throughout the book was so touching. And the way that he gets Dutiful to come around on that, and the way that then Dutiful became close with Thick by the end, was so touching. And just like everything that Hobb gave us with Thick, with his backstory and his mom, the skill music, the way that he just has this childish delight with simple things and food, like all of it was just so touching. And what a great new character that we've added. I just loved everything we got with Thick here.
Yeah, funnily enough, to go back to just the coterie chapter, with an event so, and this, I guess I'm going to try to tie this back to the Fool again, but funnily enough, in this moment, we get one of the few moments where something extremely monumental was crystal clear to Fitz, but to nobody else.
Oh, like, yeah.
Shade's whole plan is like, Dutiful needs a coterie. However we got to do it, you got to figure it out. You're the skill master now. And then like all of this happens, and then like Chade comes back to like consciousness, and they're having a discussion like shortly after all this went down, and Fitz is just like, Chade, this is the coterie. Like, how was that not obvious to you guys? Like,
yeah.
and it's almost like, I mean, none of the other people knew what it really meant. They just knew what a coterie was based on like the general premise. But then that happened, and Fitz just was like gonna go on with life, assuming that everyone knew that the coterie had been formed. Like, oh, that was it. Like, this is the coterie now. Like, we got to do it. And nobody else knew. And Chade was just like, oh, like, I guess you're right. And then in the midst of all this happening, Fitz is sabotaging the freaking coterie, because the fool was there, which means that the fool has to be part of this coterie.
Yeah.
But now
Yeah.
he's like, and I don't know how Chade doesn't see that either, because they're both now trying to prevent the fool from going on this quest with Dutiful,
Yeah.
when the whole purpose of forming the coterie was to protect the prince in general, but on this
Oh
journey
yeah.
specifically. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
No, Fitz is particularly frustrating with the fool at the end, where he wants to protect him by leaving him back um and lose a member of the coterie and disregard the fool's own wishes around this, when the fool was very clear and like, this is my fate. I want to go there. I want to face off against the other, false white prophet. And yeah, Chadia thinks Fitz is extremely afraid of losing him and believes him. Yeah, that could be part of it, I think, too. But like at the end, I think the fool realizes that Fitz and Shade might be plotting against him, and so he's getting closer to a lot of other nobles who are coming ahead of this quest, and he's doing more gambling. And I think Hobb is trying to make it clear that like the fool is like have other irons in the fire with different people. Like, so he's gonna be able to go on this quest maybe through some of these like nobles who are there, even if like Fitz's ship leaves him back. Um, but like Fitz at the end is like, oh, he's getting into gambling. Like he thinks the fool is even acting as Lord Golden. Fitz doesn't understand the fool's play acting, or like he for some reason just can't wrap his mind around the fool, and like he thinks the fool gambling a lot with these new nobles is like indicative of him falling prey to some vices. uh, it's just at the end here, it's like, oh my god, Fitz, you are so dense with the fool and other people. It's like
it's
almost, yeah,
frustrating.
yeah,
Like, it's really frustrating because it seems like everybody else, including Chade, doesn't quite understand how dense Fitz is with the fool, because nobody understands their relationship
yeah,
like Fitz and the fool do. Um, and a lot of this stuff would have hit way harder had I not known that the last trilogy is called Fitz and the Fool. But um, it's, I think Claudia kind of hit the nail on the head. Like, at least one thing that's obvious to everybody else that knows of the Fool and Fitz and of their relationship, it's very obvious that this is quite possibly the healthiest relationship that Fitz has ever had in his life,
yeah,
and the one that makes the most sense in terms of not necessarily a loving relationship, but that they do love each other. And it hurts so much when we, especially with Jack, who just knows how the fool feels about Fitz.
yeah, yeah,
So much so for the fact that he literally carved Fitz into a figurehead that is now just perusing the high seas.
yeah,
And when Jack realizes who it is, when she sees Fitz, she's like, "Oh." And then when we hear Fitz, or when we hear the fools in Jack's conversation through Fitz's ears, it just devastated my heart to know that the fool felt all of this really, but was still steadfastly sticking to his plan and not ruining the relationship, purposefully not ruining the relationship by not thrusting something onto Fitz that he knew Fitz did not want because
yeah,
of the stakes. And like you were saying earlier, like everybody, Chade, Ketrican, like the nobles, like everyone is like dealing with these things that are really like important events for like the political landscape of the world, but they are to the fool these like tiny minute details that do not matter when he's literally trying to change the course of everything. He's
yeah,
like all these, it's like Tintaglia almost. Like Tintaglia is like all these humans are just worrying about these silly little things, and like they just don't matter. Like they matter to the humans, but humans have such a brief memory and a brief like lifespan that like this doesn't matter. Like the world at large matters, and that's kind of how I feel like the Fool views all of this. And I don't understand why the Fool. I mean, I guess the Fool's kind of put like stuck between a rock and a hard place because he doesn't want to make the relationship have even more strain by forcing to try to fix it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
he's just
Yeah.
being like really stubborn. And Fitz is like, quit doing this. And the Fool's just like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And Fitz like just storms off. He's just like, I can't handle this right now.
And Fitz is
Like,
always having this thought of like he wants to make up with people, but he's like, I can't like go to them. I can't imagine like actually like saying certain things or like interrupting them or bothering them. Like he always has these thoughts about like coming up with the reasons why he can't like apologize or make up to people, which is I think prolonged that argument. But Derry's right. That argument between Fitz and the Fool was so hard to read because like Hobb set it up so wonderfully with, or not wonderfully, but excruciatingly painfully with Jack coming, and like seems like Fitz was a little bit intrigued with Jack like as a romantic interest or just as this attractive strong woman, and he got so offended and angry that the Fool was leading Jack to believe that there was some sexual relationship. And I think the Fitz was also aware of other people around the keep having these rumors, and just like it was offending his manly pride, I think, and he didn't want people to be confused about this, and he let this petty thing really take over his whole mind for a little while. That led to him, having that argument with the Fool, and it was such a poignant scene for us as the reader because the Fool's like, stop, like don't say anything that you're gonna regret. Or I don't even know if even what the Fool said exactly before. Fitz was like I would never go to bed with you, and then right afterward the Fool's like, oh, you didn't have to do this. Now we're both gonna have to live with you having said that, like the memory of that for the rest of our lives. I'm like, oh my god, Hobb, why are you just like stabbing us in the heart repeatedly here? But really, really poignant stuff from Hobb with that whole scene. And yeah, brutal for us who loves both characters and just wants them to enjoy their companionship and their more platonic, pure love that's kind of removed from romance. And Fitz is too dense to see that. And to later he realizes that he was being an idiot, and like the Fool wouldn't have been dishonorable in any way, would never have acted against if Fitz wasn't interested in anything. Like he's yeah, it was so painful, that whole argument. But I think really compelling and a bold choice for Hobb to go there with two main characters that we are very attached to to do something that was so painful for both of them, and to have them be kind of estranged for a lot of the second half of the book. And yeah, that was painful.
and then Derry brought up the subtle, very subtle moment that somehow like almost hit me as hard as like losing Night Eyes. When the Fool has that realization that it wasn't Fitz leaving the Posies, and all this time he thought
Oh
that
yeah.
Fitz. I was like, oh my god, like, wow.
Yeah. Oh, that's brutal. That's brutal. Yeah. Yeah, that's more stabs to the
I
heart
know.
there. Yeah.
Um, I
Oh
guess we should probably
man.
talk
Yeah.
about. I feel like Dutiful had the single most growth out of any character in this book because, again, we get all this through Fitz's point of view, and Dutiful is a little kind of insufferable and like a classic very young prince when Fitz first meets him, but
Yeah.
he grows up extremely quickly in this book. And it's funny because, again, this is just like incredible character work. I saw so much of Fitz as a child in Dutiful by Dutiful's actions, and Hap too. There's so many parallels between how Fitz acted as a child and the forbidden love and friendships that were warned against or suggested against, and people going through with it anyways. But then there were so many moments where like Fitz realized that Dutiful had a lot more in the tank than people were giving him credit for. Um, and I think Fitz kind of grew to respect Dutiful a lot more because he understood that Dutiful was just another one of, I don't know, another cog in the political machination, and he's just this young kid trying to figure out how to maneuver all of this stuff. And he's got ideals that he's learned from Ketrican about being sacrificed. And now, Ketrican has spent the last however many years trying to blend her beliefs of the mountain people with showing respect and learning the ways of the Six Duchies and proving to the people of the Six Duchies that she's a worthy queen, but not losing her identity as a mountain sacrifice. And we see like obviously like Dutiful like willingly being given over as you know collateral, and nobody knew, like not even Dutiful knew that that was going to
Yeah.
happen, but in the
Yeah.
moment he was just like, I have to do this, like.
Yeah.
And like that little part was like the mountain identity that Ketrican raised him with, showing that he needed to understand like what sacrifice really was, and to show the people of the Six Duchies that you know he cares about them and that he's going to be a worthy, because there's a lot of like, this dude's not even going to be able to be king in waiting for, or prince in waiting for what, like 6 years or something. So everyone's just kind of like writing him off, and he's now just trying to prove to everybody that he's worthy of like being the next in line to reign over the Six Duchies. And I don't know, there's a lot of growth between Fitz's and Dutiful's relationship, and a lot of that comes with when Dutiful learns about who Fitz, kind of is. But
Yeah. Yeah. But even
it was
before
fun
that,
to watch that.
yeah. But even before then, Dutiful is so hungry to be around Tom, who he thought was Tom Badgerlock. Like he just is so sick of everyone treating him like the prince, and I think that's why he loved having his friendship with Civil, because that seemed more real, and it does seem like that's the case. And but also just so hungry to have more relationships where he's treated uh, like a normal person and not with kid gloves or prince gloves, if you will. So like I think he was so hungry just to always be around Tom, and the way he wanted Tom to be at the betrothal ceremony, and at the where else did he make sure he wanted Tom to be at? Like there were like a few moments in the book where he's like, oh Tom, I need you to be there, I want you to be there, and where just like Tom's presence seemed so reassuring to him. So even before he realized who he really was, I think it was touching to see Dutiful just gravitate towards Tom. And then after he learned he was Fitz Chivalry, when Chade was just calling out Fitz. I loved how Fitz is almost dying, and he heard Chade try to cover it up, like, "Oh, that's a nickname, a joke between us that we had." Like, and Fitz is it's like he's like dying, and he's like, "Oh, that's weak, Chade, weak." I like, and then I'm like, okay, this is great though. Like I wanted Dutiful to know who he really was, and then he looks up to him like Fitz keeps thinking Dutiful's looking up to him like his father, like he would his father, or and that he was like had this new kind of just like real attraction towards Fitz. And I really am enjoying this development of his and Dutiful's relationship as he mentors Dutiful, and uh, But yeah, I really enjoyed Dutiful's whole arc because he really was a very believable kind of princeling here, where he is chafing at all the restrictions and needing to marry someone he wasn't interested in, and was interested in Lady Vance, and then he's not interested in the Narcheska, but they actually like so like yeah, he's acting like a teenage boy, and less like the sacrifice, but he's we saw him grow over the course of the book, and I think we saw him at the end when he got challenged by the Narcheska Eliania, and he accepted. Like he's feeling a lot of youthful pride there, but also I think we're getting a sense like, oh, maybe they're a real like great match for each other. Like they're both so willful, so like and uh, seem like honor duty bound, and excuse the pun with his name, Dutiful, but like and he got the Eliania little like doll from the beach of the other's beach, and like that's a sign that I think they're meant for each other. But Eliania too is she she's been very like aggressive in this whole situation, and like she wants to go back home and not marry Dutiful. But I think they're gonna end up together. I have the feeling like they're a kind of match in the making, and that they'll be good for each other.
That like little, I guess, well, massively impactful, but like little pissing contest, like for lack of a better word, that was like on display for everybody between Eliania and Dutiful was like awesome. I was just picturing like these children screaming like world altering events at each other, like trying to one up each other.
Oh
and
my God,
everyone in there being like, yeah, yeah.
That was such a good scene. That was so good. Yeah. I'm like, oh
like
my
I just
God.
like they're like
yeah.
like not even like a like these I just pictured these like prepubescent voices
yeah.
screaming at each other like, oh, you want me to kill the dragon? Like, okay, guess what? I'll do it. You have to come. And she's like, guess what? I will. And everyone's just like, yes, this is amazing.
Oh my God. That was an awesome scene. And like, I loved all of the Out Islanders cheering during the whole thing. And Fitz is, I think, just horrified at this, and Shade, like they don't want him to accept, and but I think, what do you think about that whole challenge? I think Eliania was just basically was told to say this, but the point was by Piotr or his mom's faction, like to try to just like end this whole entanglement and challenge him to something so ridiculous that he would say no, and that she would then have a reason to like, okay, I'm done with you, I'm going back home. I think that's what she was doing there. But then I got questioning that, because everything towards the end with the other White Prophet, and like her designs are to get like events to this certain place where like everything that Eliania is doing and that Ketrikin's doing around this match between Dutiful and the Narcheska is like something that's part of the plans of the other White Prophet. And so now I don't really know, but at least Eliania, I thought, was doing it to try to just like, she thought Dutiful was not going to accept the challenge, but then he does, and she's very prideful. So once he challenges her, she's like, yes, I'm going, I'm game. Like, I love that. I can't wait to see their interactions on this dragon killing quest. Like, I'm pumped for more Dutiful and Eliania stuff. But also, like, I thought on the cover, I thought once we got the scene of seeing the tattoos on Eliania's back, I thought this was Eliania. Because, like, I'm like, okay, I thought this was like a grown woman, but okay, the artist just drew Eliania to be a little more mature or larger than I had expected. But I'm like, okay, that's Eliania's tattoos. Got it. And then I'm like, oh my God. When the Fitz comes in, the fool standing there in like the sheets, and he shows him the tattoos, I was like shocked. I did not know what was happening. And then I'm like, this cover painting must be of the fool.
Yeah,
I'm
I
like,
remember in our last
wow,
conversation,
yeah,
you brought that book out, and you're like, "What could this possibly mean?"
like also the fool is a very attractive person specimen. Person is
Yeah,
are
I mean,
they yeah,
is
like
that the fool as Amber? Like, I
I
don't.
imagine this is the fool in that scene where like this is a much more feminine fool than the one we get on the mass market, which is like Fabio-esque,
Yes.
like very hyper masculine fool
Yeah.
there. Um, but yeah, so that was like, oh my god, that's like a really important major plot point on the cover, but I don't
Yeah,
think people
this
would really ever know
like
or guess what that
this is
was.
that's Lord Golden.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
I think that's Amber. That's how I
Yeah.
viewed it, at least.
Yep, yep,
Um,
yep.
but yeah, so I mean, we get Derry mentioned too about Dutiful's skill breaking the skill command. We get Fitz realizing how I think Chade didn't quite understand the weight of Dutiful being a powerful skill user, but knew that it was important that he get guided. But I think that Fitz is like coming to realize how many people are like strongly skilled surrounding the prince, including the prince himself. So things are like becoming more real. Like Fitz is like, oh, these I don't really know what I'm doing, but now we have the scrolls and we can learn more. And Chade has like more of the like academic knowledge, but not the practice knowledge. And Fitz has more of the practice experience knowledge, but not the academic knowledge of the skill. And so like there's this convergence of like Chade's having like an end of life crisis because he's
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
all of this like incredible, like hidden for so long information about the skill and its potential and its uses
And
that
himself,
we
and
like
himself.
I did.
Like,
Yeah, and then he's like, oh, like there's all this stuff that can be done with the skill that was written about that we found, but I also could learn it. And so he's like freaking out, and Fitz is like, yo, dude, you need to chill. Like you're literally falling prey to what everyone warns about in just following the skill, seeking the skill, and giving into that pool. And Chade's like, I don't even care. Like, I gotta learn. I gotta. Fitz is like, please don't do anything on your own. Chade's like, but I'm gonna do a lot of stuff on my own, and you can't stop me. And Fitz is
yeah.
just like, oh my god, like what is going on here? It's
But
so
that
weird.
yeah, but it all worked out in the end. Like Chade almost lost himself in the skill, but everyone like brought him back, and he learned his lesson. I think, kind of, maybe about being careful with the skill. Um, so yeah, the coterie though with all of them, where they each bring their own strengths to it, where Jade brings his knowledge of the human anatomy, and Dutiful just brings his control of the skill, and Thick brings his pure strength with it. Like I love that they all kind of have their own strengths and niche in the group and the coterie, and can add to it. Um, let's see. Chade is pretty desperate, Derry says, or Shadia says. And Fitz's healing is catalytic in the understanding of how versatile the skill is. Yeah, they're starting to learn a lot more of what they can do with it, which is good. Although they can also project it out to like everyone, including whoever was receiving that message with the skill music of Thick. Remember at the end when there's like this non-human figure that's like, "Hi, I have you now." I was so curious if
Yes.
that was Tintaglia, because there were a couple
I,
moments throughout this book where Tintaglia was like connecting to Fitz. When he was accosted by Selden on the stairs, it seemed like Tintaglia was like part of that conversation, and that Tintaglia
yes.
was like communicating with Fitz too. So I don't know. I didn't get the feeling like that presence at the end was Tintaglia, but maybe another dragon. Maybe who is the dragon they're trying to go kill? Is it Icefire? Is that the name of that dragon?
Yeah, something like that.
But I am very curious what the deal is with that, because it was only Fitz that heard it, and it didn't sound like a positive thing. It sounded like so that's an intriguing thing.
I think like you and I both did a lot of live ship and a lot of Tawny Man on audio,
yeah.
and I also thought that was Tintaglia talking to Fitz, but I had this picture of Tintaglia's voice from live ship with I forget the narrator for live ships.
Flossnick.
Flossnick, yeah. That isn't the same as this narrator's voice for
Yeah,
Tintaglia. So it wasn't
yeah,
like a
yeah,
dead
yeah,
giveaway that it was Tintaglia.
yeah, yeah.
But it's almost like I feel like I recall a moment where Tintaglia isn't quite sure how or why she is so drawn to Fitz. Like why can she was like why are you so strong, like why am I so drawn to you, like I need to figure this out, and then it feels like kind of like Selden again somehow is like the fulcrum point of this other crazy relationship, and we still have yet to come to the point where the world at large, and it's to kind of parallel to real life, like everything that we hear about in today's like real life, like we hear about it immediately, like we're so connected to everything, but we're at a point in this narrative where the world has heard stories about dragons coming back, but there's not a lot of peoples that believe
Yeah.
that. So there has to, at some point, somehow, the world at large is going to learn that dragons are making a comeback and they're going to be roaming the skies again. And so what is that effect going to have on everybody? Because they're super powerful, and there's certain people that have the ability to connect with them and communicate with them, and there's certain people that don't. Like obviously the Rainwild people, some of them at least, have the ability to connect with them, and
Yeah,
the
and is that the same exact
Elderlings,
thing as the skill? Like
I don't know.
Selden seems to be attuned to whenever Fitz is using the skill near him, and so that seems to be maybe similar, if not the same, actual magic, just called something different. But
And is that
yeah,
why the fool believes that preserving the Farseer line is so incredibly important? Because we see it again in, I mean, Chade now, Fitz, Nettle, who we haven't even talked about. Like Nettle is a whole nother aspect of this that seems she seems to be very powerful.
yeah, to the point where I was wanting, just like Chade, I wanted her to come to Buckkeep and to hone the skill and become part of the coterie, because she obviously has great ability with it, but Fitz is so stubborn about it and keeping his whole existence secret from Molly and Burrich. And I guess I'm happy that Nettle's being left at home, probably, for this quest, because if she was part of the coterie, like I feel like Fitz, his whole like internal life would be dominated with concern and fear for her. And at least if she's like over there with Molly and Burrich, like she's out of Fitz, Fitz thinks she's safe and he's not totally worried about her every moment. But
Yeah.
like those scenes are so amazing. Like she doesn't know who this is, but she feels a connection to him, and she feels like she can unburden herself to Fitz in their skill dreams with each other.
Yeah.
And my goodness, what a scary scene that was, though, where this like dragon figure kind of came into their
Oh
dream,
yeah.
and Nettle kind of overpowered it in some way. I didn't know if that was Tintaglia or another dragon or what was going on there. That's
That was
like
bizarre.
like I love that we get a couple like really bizarre, enigmatic, horror like scenes in most of these books.
Yeah,
Like
there's like one. It seems like
yeah.
there's at least one.
Didn't we learn something new about the Others Island in this one? Where that was the we learned something about the island. Is it like the place that the dragons used to
I think
go
so.
to lay their eggs? Like they
Yep.
would lay
I
their
think
eggs there, which um, adds more intrigue to whatever the others are. Um,
I think that's when the fool was telling Fitz about what he had learned while he was spending time at Bingtown and on the high seas. But I might be wrong about that. Yes, this is something we haven't talked about yet because this was another just absolutely heart wrenching moment where Fitz is again just
yeah.
viewing this all through a little slit in the stone wall. And I
Oh
wanted
man.
him
Yeah.
so badly, and Chade wanted him so badly to just like burst out and be like, I'm here. Like, you don't have to live the rest of
Yeah.
your life completely burdened thinking that you failed me. Guess
And
what?
also thinking that the wit is the cause of all of it, and it's
Yes.
horrible, and just this part of Burrich's own self that he has to repress, and then repress it in his son too, and create like intergenerational trauma that's unnecessary. So yeah, there's so much that was frustrating about Fitz staying hidden, but it was nice to see Burrich again, and although it was still like tough because you know that his own feelings towards the wit were unjustified and that he shouldn't have been treating his son like this, and you're like, oh, if you just like if you keep the son there, you'd be keeping him away from all this family drama and trauma. And it's like when he goes back and Nettle's crying all the time about it, and like it was such a relief uh, when when Swift came to the Buckkeep at the end and could escape like
Yes.
the family at that point. You're like, oh, okay, you can actually learn about the wit in this more open environment. And like that whole like plot towards the end where uh like those Oblood people are treating with Ketrikin, and Webb
Oh
is
yeah.
like this really just like this awesome sage like figure, and he wants to live at Buckkeep and tell stories of the old blood, like, and Swift is joining the Buckkeep Castle now, and he's becoming a page. Like all of that was so nice, and I was so worried something horrible was going to happen. Like I was so tense that whole last section of the book where Dutiful, was taken as a hostage, and I was worried that some like undercover piebalds were going to cause havoc
Yeah.
at some point during these negotiations. But like the fact that they actually had legitimate like negotiations and they seemed to go overall pretty well, and people were getting convinced on both sides that they can move
Yeah.
forward in peace. Like that was so nice. Like I was so worried that Hobb was just gonna like throw some sort of dagger through our hearts, like and wreak havoc. But it was like more of a hopeful, kind of more societal progress type of storyline that I really enjoyed that.
I
And
did too.
yeah,
Again, it was another way that Hobb kind of paralleled to real life. Like we're now seeing the effects of what this long time persecution of witted folk, we're seeing what the fallout is, and it's a lot of factions being created, a lot of different camps where people hold different beliefs about other people that are unjust because it's all based on misinformation and misunderstanding of the exact nature of something. And even within the people that have the wit, they have fallen prey to infighting and
yeah,
like people like Loudwine and And yeah, like Claudia said, like Birch is a victim of that. Like he and it's Birch's beliefs. It's sad because they aren't coming from a place of malintent. Like he's truly doing what he believes to be the right thing.
Yeah.
And he was doing it with Fitz too. Like all of these hard things that Fitz has, come to learn weren't true about the wit. Um and one of the things again, like we were talking about Dutiful earlier, that he doesn't get enough credit for, and Derry brought it up. He realizes the importance in the future of having a relationship with old bloods, not the piebalds, but the old bloods that really understand what it means to be witted, and can help him understand how persecuted they really are, because Ketrican's trying to fight against that uh, openly, and doesn't care what anybody thinks, doesn't care what any of the lords of the other six duchies thinks. Like she's like, this is wrong. And I think she's always been very open and interested in learning about the magics that she doesn't possess, because
Yeah.
she doesn't have the skill, she doesn't have the wit, but she realizes not only that they are a part of her people, some of them, but they're a part of like other types of peoples across this land as
Yeah.
well, and to turn a blind eye to them and not try to fully understand them, I think is something that she doesn't want to do, and she's instilled that in Dutiful. Like
Yeah.
Fitz is like, yo, you got to be careful with Civil and all these people, and Dutiful is like, why? I need at least one person that can help me learn this if you aren't going to teach
Yeah.
me. And then Fitz is like, well, shit, like I said, I wasn't going to teach you, and I really don't want to, but you have it, and I can't really stop you from going to learn about it. And so it seems like Dutiful really understands how important this relationship is going to be in the future of his potential reign, or just his mother's reign.
Yeah, Ketrican did feel Night Eyes go, so she probably has some semblance of the magic
Yeah,
of some kind.
that's
But
true.
like I think she just has such a strong sense of right and wrong, and such strong ethics, and just good heartedness and openness to change and progress, and trying to move society in the right direction. Like there's so many good qualities about Ketchikan, and I have a little bit of a crush on Ketchikan, myself. Like I think Fitz is a bit of a fool for kind of just trying to ignore Ketchikan as a possible romantic interest. It's like Verity's been gone a while now. It's like Ketchikan seems to have some affection towards you. This beautiful, strong-willed, morally upright, honorable queen is there, like protecting over you as you're healing. It's like open your eyes a little bit, Fitz. Like, is that the person that Jenna was seeing in Fitz's hand? I don't know, but like Jenna seemed okay, and she was. I was into that relationship with Fitz for a while, but by the end we realized like, oh, Jenna has this strong prejudice against Witted, where she was like fighting back her prejudice a little bit, going outside of her comfort zone by having this relationship with Fitz. But like by the end, we realized she had some really ignorant ideas about the Witted, and was not the right fit for Fitz, and was um, so I'm hoping maybe that this is my shipping hopes that Fitz and Ketchikan might realize they have some strong feelings towards each other, but we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. That's not really important. But I
Not
myself
now.
was finding myself very drawn to Ketchikan throughout this book, because she was just so awesome in so many ways.
Yeah, yeah. I guess I kind of misspoke, because it is. I mean, and Sam pointed out, like, it's obvious that Ketrigan is in tune to at least the wit, um, but we don't really get much of that ever. Like, we don't experience her like utilizing it, or we. I don't think we really know in any way of her using it outside of when she is mentioned Night Eyes, or like in Farseer where her and Fitz did connect, like um but regardless, she seems to think much more open-mindedly about all this magic that exists in the world than a lot of other people do. And she seems like ready to confront the fact that it exists and not try to bury it, which is a great quality for somebody leading the Six Duchies.
Yeah, totally. I feel like Kettrikin is this very much an enlightened monarch, essentially. And I think in it shows that in the right situation, I think an enlightened monarchy could actually be a really great form of government for people and society. It's just that so often monarchs with absolute power, control of a lot of land and people and resources, end up not being ethically upright and gearing everything towards progress and improving society for everyone. And they tend to be more greedy and corrupt and just wanting the status quo and power for themselves and their families. But Kettrikin is just such an awesome leader here. And yeah, I'm loving her in this series so much. I'm gonna be sad if she doesn't come on the quest and we leave her back at Buckkeep and she's not a big part of the third book. But we'll
Yeah.
see.
And then Sam and Derry are kind of chatting too about just, Derry said Jenna had that comment where she said, "I'm not biased. I have witted friends." And
Yeah.
there's so much, like, you hear people make comments about that in real life, about
Yeah.
persecuted groups of people, or
Minorities in any way.
minorities
Yeah.
in any way, and it makes your skin just like cringe when you hear somebody make a statement like, you know, "I'm not racist. I have black friends." Like, that's what that statement felt like.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
as if to say that, like, because you are friends with one person that's a group of a minority, you just are immune to ever being racist, or uh not fully understand. Like, that's not true. Like, people in the real world base so much of their judgments of other people, not other. I mean, I fall prey to this too. I think it's just a part of humanity where we don't really fully understand people, but we, especially as adults, I feel like, make these sweeping generalizations that can be very, very harmful. And it's the exact thing that I feel like Ketrigan is trying to fight against. And it's become even more important and close to her because she now knows that her son has the potential to be persecuted for the rest of his life, even as a prince. Like, so she really wants to fight back against this, because it's now, not only is it just like, bar talk, but it's, people are dying. Like, large amounts of people are getting killed because of this misunderstanding in the world. Um,
I love
so
I
it's
love that Kettrikin is oh man, what's the phrase I'm thinking of? Um, putting your something where your mouth is. Putting your Is there a phrase like your where you do what you say you were gonna do? Putting your something where your mouth is. But
putting
she
your money where your mouth is. I don't know.
That's probably it. That's probably it. Where she rode out with like the guard when she heard there was going to be an execution and stopped it right before it was happening and basically said, "We're going to come around and see if this is ever going to happen again, and people are going to be in trouble if things don't change." And like it required that level of change for to sometimes you have to do things, make changes by force and make people like realize that they have to respect the new laws, that there's going to be change, people have to act differently. And as Webb kind of insinuates, like, and as other characters I think are coming to realize, it's as people get out of the afraid of like their fear of just like getting killed if they're out in the open, as they can like integrate into society more and share stories, and it's more this fear that's rooted in ignorance, and like just this new mixing of everyone and the old blood being out in the open is gonna, I think, over time be what is needed to, reduce the general societal prejudices against people. But yeah, that hits so close to home because it feels like very realistic for a lot of different kind of types of minorities in our world and prejudices against them and underlying prejudices. Like just a really well done deep theme that Hobb was just, I think, nailing here. And even like things like the one old blood person who wanted total revenge and killing everyone eye for an eye, but Kettrikin basically putting her foot down and be like, no, that will never end the violence. That will just cause an endless cycle of violence.
Yeah.
And that's not how you move forward. And like we can recognize injustice without continuing the cycle. And that was just like great stuff. Had a lot of real world resonance, and yeah, just A+ theme work from Hobb here.
Yeah. No, and just people like Webb who are fighting against it just by simply like there's certain people that understand that, and Webb is one of them. You can't change everybody's mind, but if his only goal seems to just be like letting people get to know him as Webb, not as a witted person. And he's just doing stuff like, "Hey, you want to come meet my hawk or, whatever his bird is?"
Yeah,
And
I was just
some of the
worried
people are
that,
like, "No, no, no,
yeah,
no, 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 no. I don't want to do that." And then
the
some people are like,
seagull, the
"I
seagull.
might do that."
I
Yeah,
was just
it was a
I
secret.
was just immediately worried that like someone was gonna kill the seagull, and just like I was so worried in this whole part of the book that just like horrible events were gonna happen and destroy like this nice new understanding that was happening. And like, but Kettrikin went to go have like lunch with Webb and the seagull and the guard, and like her presence there was, I think, a facilitator of this like greater peace and understanding between everyone. um Man, like, yeah, Webb is wonderful. Risk is a gull. I love
Yeah.
it. But yeah, I'm curious to go back to Nettle a bit. How do you feel about Nettle? I feel like she's gonna maybe end up playing a large role in events. I have no clue how, but like the fact that she's just continually a presence in the book through the dreams and through the connection to Fitz and that weird dream at the end, like I don't know. What
I
are
think
your thoughts?
it seems again like one of those inevitable things that certain people understand that Fitz doesn't. Like Fitz is just like, no, like Nettle's not coming here. I don't care what any of you say. It seems like a thing that he has this false sense of control over, and Shade's like, okay, buddy. And the fool was just like, okay, man, like, you think you have control over all this stuff, but like there's this thing called like destiny, and like I don't even really fully understand it, but like I get these visions and stuff's gonna happen, and I think Nettle's involved, and Fitz is just like, nah, it's all right. She's just not. Like, you can't bring her here. And it feels like again, like this thing, like everyone around Fitz knows that Nettle has to be involved in this somehow. And Fitz is just like stubbornly not accepting that. So
Yeah, yeah, I definitely think things with Nettle are gonna end up spiraling out of Fitz's control, but maybe for the better. Nettle doesn't seem like she's doing too well over there on the ranch with
yeah.
that family. Like she's so I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen, but um, man, she seems like a major wild card at this point. But are there any other characters? Oh, we could hit more on Jinna and Hap. We haven't talked too much about them, but man, at the beginning, I was all about the new romantic relationship with Fitz and Jinna, and it got a little steamy there, and I think Hobb is pretty good with those types of scenes, and um,
Yeah.
like I was enjoying Fitz getting closer to Fennel the cat over there at that house. I'm like, this is a nice little new like domestic thing Fitz has going on. I wouldn't have minded that continuing, but if Jenna were actually more understanding, like Jenna saw him hugging Laurel in the bar and was like, I'm done with Fitz. I'm like,
Yeah.
come on, like you should try to understand like what's going on with this. This could be an old friend. This could be a family relation. This like could be for any reason. And immediately Jenna was like jumped to the worst conclusions. Um, and it did
This
not.
was a
Yeah, that was the first sign to me that Jenna was like, oh, maybe you're not the right person for Fitz.
yeah, I think that this was a fun little side relationship type of thing. Like, and admittedly, from Fitz's perspective, he did not give the respect or the weight to what was happening that I think Jenna maybe was. But Jenna also was content with just accepting that things were the way they were and didn't need to be anything other than what they were. And Fitz was just like, nah, that just doesn't feel right. Just like the same thing that happened with Starling, although that was like she was sleeping with him outside of a marriage. But Fennel was awesome. Fennel, like, as an owner of two cats in the house, just felt like such a cat. Just the things that Fennel said is literally like, if my cats could speak, that is what they would say and how they would say it.
Oh my god. Was
It's
Langton not just perfect voicing
oh my yeah
Fennel? Oh my god, Langton's voices for everyone are just so perfect. Like for the humans and for Fennel, for Night Eyes. Like I was listening to it mostly on audio because I just enjoy Langton so much. And like when we got Night Eyes' few lines here, like, oh my god, the voice for Night Eyes is so good. But Fennel too. Oh my god, perfect, perfect. I
yeah
loved I love Fennel. I hope we haven't seen the last of Fennel, but like I love how Fitz is able to bond with so many animals in like less intense ways than as the like wit bond companion. Like he bonds
yeah
with Fennel a little bit. He's bonding with his own horse, My Black. He's bonding with the ferret, who I forget the name of the ferret, but I love
I don't
all the
remember yeah
little all the different animal companions we get. I think it's nice to see Fitz like kind of just having these less intense bonds with not needing to become like a wit companion again. But yeah, loving that. And then man, the stuff with Hap and like his girlfriend and the girlfriend's father, like that was so heavy. That was like that added so much tension and complexity to that whole storyline that um man, I almost could have done without because stuff was so tense back at Buckkeep. Like the fact that Hap was falling apart and being manipulated by this girl and causing havoc with her father and like leading Fitz to get into a fight with the father and then Hap is blaming Fitz. Like, man, that was almost too much for me. I'm like, oh my god, Fitz is getting blamed for all the stuff he doesn't need to be blamed for. Um,
yeah
but just like almost too much drama almost. Like for a book where not a lot happens, almost I felt like we could have done with less happening and more just
yeah
like peaceful slice of life stuff. But oh yeah, what did Darius says clearly Svanja is a gold digger or just someone who's like flitting back and forth. Like her previous boyfriend, the sailor, wasn't there, and so she's like maybe just
right.
an attention hound, and um, yeah, but
And then just
it's
seeing Fitz
not great.
like not know how to handle Hap because Hap's at this age where he's still I guess not maybe in this culture's perspective, but like in our culture's perspective, like he'd still be like a child, like he's a teenager just trying to like begin his life really. And so Fitz is struggling because he's Haps at this point where like Fitz can't really control Hap's actions anymore. And Fitz can only do so much in terms of giving advice, but Fitz has just kind of they've grown to the point where it's just like Fitz realizes eventually that like he just needs to be there for however Hap needs him and like whatever capacity Hap needs
Yeah.
him. Like he can no
And then
longer
seeing,
control him.
yeah,
Like it's kind of a beautiful thing that Fitz realizes, you know. Like I can't
and
make him do
beautiful,
things. Like
yeah,
he
and
has to
beautiful
learn
when
these
Hap,
things by doing them.
exactly. And when Hap is coming to more of his own maturity and growth, and realizing that he loves Tom and as this father figure, and he's at the end, he's saying like, "Oh, I'm sorry, like you're right, I do listen to what you've taught me," and that was so poignant and touching.
Yeah.
And it's just this little unexpected thing, like this storyline with Hap. Like I don't know how Hobb even came up with it, but it's just like a brilliant way for Fitz to have had this kind of fatherly type of experience and relationship, and to grow through relating to like someone who
Yeah.
was similar to him and being abandoned, and just it's such a nice, touching storyline all along the way. But I am a little worried about Hap, because Jenna is worried that when the sailor leaves, that Svanja is going to come back to him, and Hap kind of even said something like that. He's like, I know what Svanja is doing now and what she's all about, but if she came back to me now, I would accept her. and and Fitz doesn't seem to really be too worried about that, but I am a little worried that
I mean,
Svanja and Hap is gonna cause more trouble for Hap, and Fitz still doesn't fully know how to grasp the whole parenting thing.
yeah, I was get Claudia just brought it up too. I was gonna say like this has some similarities to
Yeah,
kind of how Fitz and Molly were. Like there was a lot of people that were not really for it. And I remember even Ketrican, I think, at one point being like, yo, what you're doing like isn't cool. Like you need to commit or not commit. And either way it's fine, but you need to make a decision. And so Fitz is seeing like Hap struggling with all this type of stuff. But also I feel like he's just come to the conclusion that like he said what he said what he said, and he raised Hap a certain way to have beliefs of morals and rights and wrongs, and uh, that's about all he can do now. Like maybe Hap will have to learn through making mistakes, and Fitz
yep,
can't prevent them, and perhaps that is the best way for because that's a lot of what's happened with Fitz is creating grievous errors that everybody warned him about, and then realizing later that they were right. I should have listened.
yeah. And Jenna actually had some wisdom along the way here. She wasn't all bad, and she was counseling Fitz to kind of be harsh with Hap and let him make his own mistakes, and if he didn't have any place to go, that he would have to go to his master's place, and kind of asked to stay there, and so Jenna had some wise counsel about that. She seemed to kind of have a better handle on how to parent a little bit than Fitz. But yeah, Fitz learning all these things, I think we're all rewarding for us to go through with him, and nice to see where he and Hap ended up at the end, and just how Hap was coming to visit him when he was injured and healing, and all that was
Yeah,
great stuff. Yeah, Chadia says being a father or any parent is learning and making mistakes.
that is
What
true.
did Derry say? It's a point all parents have to reach. Trust that what you've taught your child will keep them safe from your own mistakes. Ooh, heavy and poignant stuff there. Yeah.
And Hobb is so the opposite of heavy-handed when it comes to all this stuff that it just feels so much more realistic.
Mm,
Um, I mean, reading exactly what Derry said is what one sentence, but what Hobb does is displays it over the course of I don't know what like 1,500 pages where we get to see like Fitz and Hap as a young child to get to the point where Fitz is just like, I guess I've done what I can do. Like I've raised Hap for years. I cannot control him anymore. He's not a child. He's a young man, and he will do what he will do. But I will love him nonetheless.
Yeah. There is like just she lays it out, lets you take from it what you will. Yeah, there's so much of that with all these different types of life lessons and relationships and personal identity things throughout these
Yeah.
books. Are there any major plot points or relationships that we have not touched on yet? Derry's usually good, chatty
Yeah.
about bringing up some points of discussion. But like,
I think the only the main thing that I don't think we touched on, which isn't a big thing, but I'm glad that Fitz tried to mend the relationship with the Fool right at the end before, because in Fitz's mind he's like leaving the Fool behind. So he's like, I gotta try to fix this or not leave it the way it was. Not that he can fix it, but just try to like alleviate some of the strain. So I'm glad that Fitz was smart enough to try to do that, because I think it really would have strained the relationship had Fitz not even tried to make an effort to right his wrongs. And he straight up just said, like, I realize what I said changed the nature of our relationship forever. And you were right, because ever since I said those things, I cannot not think about them. Like, they have been said, they're a thing that happened. Now I need to realize that I messed up and I want to try to make it better. And I'm glad that that happened. Although
and then
I know
at the end though, they had such a nice little interaction, and Fitz is like swallowing a bit of his manly pride, I think, when he calls him. He said good night. What did he say? He uses beloved, right?
Yeah. Yep.
What did he say? Oh no, I lost it.
He was like, what should I call you? Like, I don't know what to call you. I don't care, but I want to call you something. And
okay. You said that once that I might call you beloved if I no longer wish to call you fool. I took a breath. Beloved, I have missed your company. And then he seemed to really surprise the fool there. And then Fool said, don't you think that might cause some talk about the keep? And I suppose that if you were going to have an appropriate name for me, it'd still be Fool, so let us leave it at that. Fitzy, to you, I'm the Fool. It balances, I suppose. Whatever is to come for us, I will always have these words to recall now. So even though they're going to have that bad, nasty conversation in memory, that they'll have this nice one where Fitz is trying to make it up to him. And that was such a nice way to end the book. Good night, fool. And then good night, beloved, he said from the fireside chair. I shut the door softly behind myself. What a great note to end the book on. But we even then have an epilogue from Fitz's writings. It doesn't say from what writings, but
I love those.
At the end, he's philosophizing. In each cycle, we may correct old errors, but I think we make as many new ones. Yet what is our alternative? To commit the same old errors again? Perhaps having the courage to find a better path is having the courage to risk making new mistakes.
Yes.
Wow, what an incredible note to end the book on. Yeah, and with all the epigraphs at the start of chapters, like, I don't know if Sanderson read these Hobb books before writing Mistborn and the Stormlight books, but like, I don't know if Hobb got this from. This is probably not the first time someone did this, but Hobb is accomplishing so much larger world building through all these chapter epigraphs, where we're getting like in-world writings that are giving all this world building stuff and lore and history, and like in some cases it seems like really like non-factual, like biased world building notes in history, but they're all interesting and fascinating. And man, they're great. Like, I'm loving getting those at the start, and something Sanderson does a lot in his books. But
Is one of my favorite ways that Hobb world builds, because it feels like you said, she's accomplishing so much through like 4 paragraphs. And a lot of times it's just like how certain things are viewed in the world or how things came to be. And I even like, there was some parts that were like funny because in this time where like there's all these stories about like dragons coming back, like there was the one that was like this dude writing about dragons, but he like mispronounced Tintaglia's name because like through the grapevine it had like become something other than like I was like actually like laughing at that because I was like, wow, there's so much like so many people in the world have so much to learn, and I feel like it's got to happen soon.
Yep. Oh yeah. Oh, Derry said something here. I didn't know what it meant exactly. So now do you guys recognize the fool wasn't joking in the cabin when he truly told Fitz the true name? So I still don't think this is his birth name, the Beloved. I think it's like my still take is that it's like he was still making a joke in the cabin because his mom called him Beloved, like any mom calls their kid like Beloved or Darling or Sweetheart or something. So my
I didn't
take is
think
that
much about that.
the fool is still hiding, I think, his actual birth name, possibly, maybe. Anything about the fool is a mystery.
I know. I didn't really think much about it. Interesting.
So can you talk just a little bit more, since we'll probably wrap up soon, but like when you were saying some of your favorite chapters of like any book, that was right when the Bingtown people came, right? Like were you just
I kind of just meant like that
enthralled by like Selden coming to town and like those worlds colliding like from Live Ship
the conversation that Fitz and the fool had too, where the fool started telling him really about what, because like they caught up in Fool's Errand, but then I feel like that conversation where like it was right around the time where the Bingtown people were coming. It might have been right before or right after, where the fool was telling Fitz about all of this stuff that was going down, and then Fitz, meanwhile, this whole time, Fitz has these freaking feathers that he knew he should have told the fool about. Like, he's just like, I should probably tell the fool about this, but like, I don't know. Like, they probably go to that crown, but it can't be that important. It's just a massive thing that the fool saw in one of his visions that he's never been able to figure out. And then we get like that part where the fool's like, I tried to paint the crown, but it didn't feel right. Like, it used to be colorful. In the dream, it was really colorful, but I haven't been able to nail it. And then Fitz was like, I got these feathers in my sleeve. They've been here for a while. I'm like,
and
what?
And the fool as Lord Golden basically dismisses it, right? But like, the fool must have been like going crazy inside about it. But yeah, that's another. I was so frustrated with Fitz. I'm like, oh my god, he still hasn't given him the stupid feathers yet. And then he's like, but yeah, it's been so long. I don't have a good excuse for why I held them back, so I'm just not gonna give it. Like so relatable though.
I don't have much else, and unfortunately, I have to work in like an hour.
Oh yeah. We can wrap up. But man, the Bingtowners coming, that was such a great surprise. The worlds colliding between the series, exactly what I wanted more of. And man, Jack on the page there, like being confused with like seeing Amber, not Amber, and then updating us like, oh man, I loved it. I want more crossovers and I can't wait to get into
in that. And like when they were in there and Jack was in there, I just pictured Jack doing this a whole bunch of times. Oh, like she's like learning so much. She's like, oh, this is who you carved. Oh, who's the fool? Like, oh, who is Amber? Like,
here, this might be a good note to end on for us. Fitz and the Fool are both driven in many ways by destiny or fate. They both leave important things until it feels right.
And the fool seems to know this and accept it, but Fitz seems to fight against this.
Oh yeah, Derry got a kick out of that. That's the face I see checkmate.
Yeah.
Oh man, just those little bits we got of like hearing about uh Kenneth and Edda's child
Yeah.
and Althea and Brashen and Tintaglia with the dragon babies. Like I am so ready to get back to the Rain Wilds. Like
Yeah.
I'm so wanting to also be back there and to know what's going on. But first we got this big boy, this big brick.
It's a big one.
This is like, are we back in Malazan territory? This feels like a Malazan book.
I'm in Malazan territory also.
This is, oh yeah, your Memories of Ice is even bigger than this one, and smaller print too. So that's gonna take a while.
Yeah, I'm feeling a lot of audio for this one.
Yeah, Althea climbing the rigging while pregnant in my head.
Oh yeah,
they're getting it third hand. Yep. Oh my
I
god, I can just
rolling
picture,
my eyes and be
picture,
like, so
I can just
Althea.
picture those arguments between her and Brashen.
Yeah.
Man, oh yeah, you got a couple of giant books to get into. So I will be away on a little family trip the first week of October. So we'll either need to have our chat about this one kind of right at the end of September or into like the second week of October, possibly. I know you might need a little time for to get through Memories of Ice and this one and your self-pub September.
We're only doing half of Memories of Ice, so.
Oh, okay, that'll help. That'll help a lot. But the fact that the audio is so good for this will definitely make it go by quicker because
I'm reading this guy right now.
Oh, look at that! Nice.
Yep, I'm a little way into it.
Nice. Yep. So. Oh, good. That'll be a nice little, I think, nice little palate cleanser for you. As far as like historical epic fantasy goes, I think that'll feel a little more like a palate cleanser than Malazan and this.
I'm really enjoying it so far. I'm only about 4 chapters into it, but I'm really enjoying it.
Oh, good. So. Good. But yeah, we got this big boy, and the fact that it's supposed to be like the series finale, definitely has me a little bit worried. But knowing the title of the final trilogy has me feeling like the Fool is not going to die permanently. At least I don't know, but I'm feeling like something's gonna happen that's very dramatic.
Something has to happen.
The Fool's fate. It's called Fool's fate. He says his fate is like facing off against this other white prophet and dying.
Yeah.
So, man, I am worried. This other white prophet and Henja, the servant, is that the white prophet? Is that just a servant of the prophet? I don't know. I am very alarmed by Henja being around and the tattoos on the back of Eliania and the fact that like she can be controlled through manipulated by them and they can be really painful for her. Like that's all very scary. Can that same thing happen to the Fool? Like with the Fool's tattoos, where like they were really painful and are they being controlled by someone else? Are those tattoos being controlled by the other prophet? But I am psyched for this quest. I want more Eliania and Dutiful.
Yes.
And like the coterie out and about. Like I like this book is huge. Like, is this just gonna be about this quest to go kill the dragon? Like, man, that is gonna be quite the quest.
Yeah, it's a long one.
Oh my god. But
a lot of plot threads need to be tied up, so I'm excited to get to it. I know it's gonna hurt, but it's gonna hurt in a Hobb way. So
yeah. Hopefully, will be cathartic and satisfying, just like Live Ship ended up being. But yeah, 5 for 5 for us so far on this read along. So let's make it 6 for 6. But even if I know like the first couple Rainwild books probably aren't going to be as impactful as most of these other books because like so many people just I've heard it's a bit of a change for the series that feels different and it's especially those first 2 books were like broken up maybe and feel more like one big book. But I'm okay. I'm prepared if we end up liking it a bit less. But who knows? Maybe it will just be a giant streak of loving every book to the end for us. We'll see. I have an open mind with it.
I do too. Hobb has won me
Yeah.
over enough to just go into it with an open mind. So
Oh,
I'm
here
excited.
Derry says, "Hurt in a Hobb way. More perfect words have never been spoken." Yeah, plenty of pain in these last couple books, but lots of fulfilling aspects to these reads and thoroughly engaging throughout. So
Yeah.
they've been awesome. It's been great. Thank you, Chadia and Derry, for all the continued comments and anyone else who's popped in.
Yes. We
And
love chatting with you guys in the comments.
Thanks to Colin for being a wonderful buddy read companion. And what does Derry say? Take at least a month break between Tawny Man and Rainwilds. It's going into Feast of Crows after Storm of Swords. Okay, I mean, I also want to read some of the short stories from Inheritance Collection and the novella Piebald Prince. So that might be a good time maybe for us to take a little break or do some of the short fiction from the series.
Yeah, maybe we'll do that. We'll figure it out when we get there.
All right. Thank you to everyone.
And yeah, thank you guys. Thank you, Ben, for having me.
Oh, all right. We'll be right back at it in about a month.
Yes, sir.
See ya.
Have a good day, guys.